Welcome to Young Turks. Michael Shore in Los Angeles, California. Cenk Uyghur's in New York. He's been doing the Dylan Radigan show on MSNBC all week. Cenk, how are things in the big city?
They are fantastic. And like you said, I've been doing the show. Today I went after Alan Simpson pretty aggressively. We might touch on that in this hour, too, because that guy is just out of control. And if Obama doesn't fire him, well, first of all, he won't, right?
Well, he won't fire him. No, he will not fire him.
No. And you know what? We'll get into that story in just a little bit, because there's a reason why Obama won't fire him, and I'll explain it. But his comments on veterans' disability benefits was atrocious.
Yeah, I agree. And, well, yeah, we'll talk about it when we talk about it. The big political story, at least in the past day, aside from the domestic political story, is and it wouldn't ordinarily be one were it not for the high profile of Arizona's governor, Jan Brewer, because of the anti-immigration law in Arizona. But she had quite a performance last night in her debate. And I think, Jan Brewer is an accidental governor. Janet Napolitano was the governor of Arizona. Jan Brewer came in, and she has been at the center of a firestorm over that legislation. And now we're seeing somebody running for governor who just put in what could only be called, a monumentally disastrous performance in front of her constituents in the state. Unless you have anything else to say about it, Cenk, I want to look at the opening statement from her debate yesterday. The opening statement, by the way, something that politicians work. It's the only part of it that you can really prepare for. The opening and closing statement. You can prepare for things you want to mention, etc., but you can't prepare for the questions. This is something that should be polished and perfect and ready for any politician. You with me?
Yep.
All right. So let's, Jesus, let's go to clip number 6 and listen to that.
Great to be here with Larry, Barry, and Terry, and thank you all for watching us tonight. I have done so much, and I just cannot believe that we have changed everything since I become your governor in the last 600 days. Arizona has been brought back from its abyss. We have cut the budget. We have balanced the budget, and we are moving forward. We have done everything that we could possibly do. We have did what was right for Arizona. I will tell you that I have really did the very best that anyone could do, and we have pushed back hard against the federal government. We have filed suit against Obama health care, and we have passed Senate Bill 1070, and we will continue to do what's right for Arizona.
So, I mean, that in and of itself, everybody has an off day, but, it just was embarrassing. I felt terribly for her, even though I can't stand her. But it speaks to someone. I mean, is this the person that Arizona wants to elect as governor, who can't even articulate one thing that she's done in her 600 days as governor?
That was nothing short of a total disaster, right? Now, politically speaking. Now, having said that, my best guess is that her prompter didn't work, that they told them probably that their opening speech would be in the prompter, and when it wasn't, she was enormously flustered and didn't have a backup plan. I'm not sure if that's true. That's just what it looked like. So then I kind of feel bad for her. But like you said, Michael, one, you should have a backup plan, because if you're governor, things aren't always going to go right, and you should have, you should be in that mindset. And then number two, come on, we got to have a minimum standard for governor, that if you're in a situation where things go wrong, you could at least articulate one or two positions that you have.
Right, and listen, this is one moment. What the things that define her governorship are not this. If this was the worst thing she did, God bless her and reelect her. But what she's done as governor has been a disaster. And just to talk to what you say about the prompter, I don't believe that it was a prompter issue, because I think that it would have said Governor Brewer's prompter malfunction leads to awkward moment. And all they've said about this is that it was a freeze. And she, just so you know, just to tell you what Brewer herself said about it, she called that the 16-second freeze the longest freeze of her life. But it was more about her actual debate content when she was asked by her opponent to explain some of her positions. One of which was that the illegal immigrants are responsible for beheadings in the desert. I think that's when you start getting to the real issues of why she shouldn't be governor. Listen, we all mess up like that. She said those were the longest 16 seconds of her life.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And what you're telling me, Michael, leads me to believe that there was not a prompter issue. Otherwise, they would have said something about it at some point.
Yeah.
I thought maybe they were afraid to say something because they were always criticizing Obama for speaking from a prompter, so maybe she didn't want to admit it. But no, it's gotten so ugly and so bad that at this point, obviously you'd have to throw that out there. And look, I know some people aren't good at public speaking, and that doesn't necessarily mean they wouldn't be a good governor, but it just violates the bounds of reason.
No,
Put out bullet points, talk about those, come on, right?
Well, just come up with one thing, and then we're going to play something else now, where her opponent Terry Goddard asked her about a recent comment she made about beheadings in the desert. She said there have been headless bodies found in Mexico, and that border violence because of that could spill over into Arizona. And after the debate, and we'll get to that, she just walked out of a press conference where people were asking her about that. She's trying to avoid talking about that comment, and doesn't seem to have any effect doing it. Jesus, let's listen to Terry Goddard, her Democratic appointment, asking her about that. That's clip number 7.
Jan, I call upon you today to say that there are no beheadings. That was a false statement, and it needs to be cleared up right now.
And Terry, I will call you out. I think that you ought to renounce your support and endorsement of the unions that are boycotting our state.
I mean, she's a deer in the headlights. She's out to lunch. She's not fit to be governor. She's not fit to be on that stage. It's ridiculous. The guy asked her a legitimate question about something she said, and she then turns around and says, you have to renounce your support of the unions. It's like Jim Bunning.
It's like I questioned you on your environmental policy, and you turn around and come back, oh yeah? I'm going to call you out because you once dated an ugly chick.
Right.
You're like, what? Okay, but wait a minute, why did we just skip over my question?
Right, and Arizona, just to remind you, has never elected this woman as governor. She came in through a line of succession once Napolitano took the job as Director of Homeland Security. So this is not the person that Arizona wanted to be their governor, and they have a month to figure out, or 2 months to figure out that it's still not the person they want to be their governor. I don't know very much about Terry Goddard because, frankly, with all the press that Brewer has had in her association with what is within her state a popular measure, which is that anti-immigration measure, I just sort of assumed that he was not a viable candidate. But when you see her, as we've just seen her, his viability has to skyrocket now.
Yes, I want to play the last clip from that,
yeah.
and then I want to talk about that viability because that's an important issue.
About the headless bodies. Why won't you recant that? Do you still believe that? Come on, Governor.
Okay, thank you all.
Governor, what do you mean?
Well, I'm astonished, frankly.
Yeah.
My favorite part was the reporters all going, oh! And to be fair, the guy you heard at the end saying, I'm astonished, frankly, was not one of the reporters. That was actually the beginning of a new clip of Terry Goddard, her opponent, who was saying that. So
okay.
Just so that.
Thank you. And she, Brewer said that the line of post-debate questioning was unfair, but that her leaving might have been the wrong thing to do. So I don't agree with her on either count. The line of post-debate questioning was perfectly fair. They were asking her about something she had said. Clarify it. Answer it. What does it mean? What's your evidence that illegal immigrants are beheading people? And the other thing is to say it might have been the wrong thing to do. It was definitely the wrong thing to do. You don't walk out of a press conference like that. She had the worst night of any politician I can remember by her own hand.
Yeah, look, politically speaking, it's an amateur move not to have an answer for a hot button issue that you knew was coming. Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, that was an issue that they've been pressing for a while, and you had to think that somebody was going to ask you, whether it's your opponent or the moderator or the press
Right.
afterwards. I mean, she ran away from that press conference. That was after a debate. After
Yeah.
a debate, you want to stick around and answer the questions and make your case. You don't want to embarrass yourself. And by the way, look, I mean, she's a rookie, so let me help her out, I guess. What you do is you have an answer. Either you're going to stick with your position and clarify it, right?
Yeah.
Or it's easy to say, hey, you know what? I misspoke there, and that's my bad, and I shouldn't have done that. And I feel terrible about that because I don't want to overhype that situation. And you know, and I won't make that kind of mistake again because I want to make sure that people understand how safe Arizona is. Whatever.
Exactly. Or there's the third out, which is, you know what? I've answered that question, or I don't want to talk about that now. I want to talk about other real issues that matter to Arizona, so I'm not going to take any more questions about that next. And it shuts the media up. I still don't like that tactic, but you see it happen all the time, and it shuts them up and lets them move on. And if they can't move on, then she just dismisses them. But to walk out of a press conference after your debate, after this horrendous debate that you just had, it seems, terrible. But you wanted to talk about her viability as a candidate, as a re-elected governor, and I think it took a shot yesterday. But again, I think the climate in Arizona, she's a de facto winner.
Yeah, Michael, isn't that? I don't know if it's sad. I don't know what it is, but I mean,
It's
just
sad.
on that one, just on that one issue of the immigration issue, and she was. A lot of people might not know this. She was not necessarily slated to win the Republican primary, even though she was a sitting governor.
Yeah.
Because as Michael told you, she'd never run in a race before, and won the seat. So, and then she was faced with this, issue of is she going to support that law or not once it passed the legislature. And the minute she signed it, she immediately, put herself in fantastic position, obviously, to win the Republican nomination and then to win the governorship. And it flat out might not matter at all what she does going forward.
Yeah, it may not. Although 2 months and we haven't hit Labor Day yet. This is kind of the election season. It happens in dribbles and drabbles, and they haven't been putting a lot of money into Arizona. The biggest race there was the primary race between J.D. Hayworth and John McCain for McCain's seat, and he blew him out of the water. So the thought was that not only are Republicans not going to go to the ballot there, but Democrats certainly won't. Now the Republicans might have to just sort of take a look at things a little bit. Again, though, that one issue is with what she is identified with, and that issue is popular in Arizona. And yeah, it's a shame and it's sad and it's terrible. It's terrible that it's popular, but Arizona will once again be able to look back in embarrassment as they did with Martin Luther King's holiday, and they will look at it with their immigration law, and they will look at it with this boob of a governor that they sent to Phoenix. I mean, it's just crazy.
Michael, I thought we had banned that word boob.
Well, that's only at Baltic High School in Ohio, where you're not allowed to say boob bees on a bracelet supporting breast cancer awareness.
Okay, all right. I just want to be clear.
Okay. So when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in Washington vis-a-vis the president and his 1 year of action on peace in the Middle East. It seems there's some interesting players and some interesting philosophies at play, and it seems that there's hope for progress. We've said that before, and we haven't seen very much of it. But when it happens, it's still nice to think optimistically about it. This is the Young Turks.
Now I was lost, confused, caught up in my feelings.
You're back on the Young Turks. Michael Schur here in Los Angeles, Cenk Uygur in New York. We just exposed Jan Brewer for what she exposed herself to be last night. We'll go back to politics and talk about David Vitter a little bit later, but we're going to take a little bit of a 360 and go to Washington, of all places, where our president seems to be doing something proactive, of all things, with as far as it refers to Middle East peace. The president entertained both Mohammed Abbas, Benjamin Netanyahu, along with Hosni Mubarak. the Arab leader who oversaw or who oversees a country that is part of the longest peace with Israel in that region, and the king of Jordan. His name, I believe, is what's his name now, Cenk? It's no longer
King
Hussein.
Abdullah.
What? King Abdullah II.
Abdullah.
That's right. Yes, exactly. But what's interesting to come out of these talks is the posture of Benjamin Netanyahu and a little bit of the philosophy of Netanyahu, similar to what we've seen from him in some circles, but really, I would say activist as far as trying to make change through being a hawk. What say you on this?
Yeah, he says that only a hawk can make long-lasting peace because they have more credibility to do it. It's an interesting argument. Everybody gets it, right? And there's some validity to it. So, when Netanyahu was elected, I said, look, this is the wrong guy. I don't think he's going to go for peace. He certainly didn't campaign on it. He doesn't have a history of it. Having said that, it does take Richard Nixon to go to China. We had that conversation when he got elected, just on the, because we want to hold out hope that it can happen. And if it does happen, and sometimes it does happen under right-wingers or, hawks or whatever you call it. But if you go with that logic, well then, shouldn't Hamas be at the table? Because they're the hawks of the Palestinians. And wouldn't that make for more lasting peace, especially because they control the Gaza Strip? How are you going to get peace without them if they don't go along?
Well, I think that I see the connection you're making between Netanyahu and being a hawk and Hamas being a hawk. Their positions, though, are very different in terms of what their roles are. I think Abbas, being the person that is speaking for the Palestinian people, I think in order to get the other parties to the table, the Mubaraks, the Abdullahs, and the Americans, the Americans are always going to be at the table, but I think George Mitchell's assessment, and he's the Mideast peace envoy from the United States appointed by Hillary Clinton, I think that his assessment that these are the people that should be working on it, because for reasonableness to prevail at all, it's going to have to happen through these people. Now, Netanyahu... What?
I'm not buying that.
And
I'll tell you why.
Well,
look, it's not because I prefer Hamas to be at the table. Of course I don't. I a million times prefer Mahmoud Abbas because I think he might do a peace deal, and I'm afraid Hamas might not. Right? But if for us to pick their leader, I'm worried that it's not going to be legitimate, that it's not going to stick, because let's get real. We made them have an election. We forced that on them. And Hamas won, and that sucks, but it happened. So, I'm worried that they're not going to get a real deal. You see what I'm saying, Michael?
I totally see what you're saying, and I also see it on the side of Netanyahu, because the further he goes from hawk to dove, the further he's going to alienate the heavy right wing within his party. There are three parties there. There's Likud, Labor, and in the middle there's Kadima, that new party. And I totally agree with you. But the point is that in alienating the very right wing and moving away from the very right on either side is clearly the way that any kind of progress is going to be made. So the concessions that Netanyahu is going to make are going to have to mirror the fact that the right wing of the Palestinians, or the extreme wing of the Palestinians, whatever adjective you want to use, is going to be upset with some of the concessions that are made on that end. I just sort of think that if you have a framework in place and you have an activist United States President and Secretary of State, it's been a long time since all these people have sat down. I think the fact that you have somebody representing everyone, and some of the whispers that you're hearing are that there are serious concessions being talked about, then I think you have to sort of let this have a chance. It's never going to be perfect. I mean, it's never going to have the people sitting down that you want to sit down. People didn't want that when Arafat was there meeting with Bill Clinton and the Y Accords. I mean, there are all sorts of problems every time these people sit down. But the point is, they're sitting down. They intend to meet every 2 weeks for the next year, which is ambitious. It is the biggest blueprint we've had. It's been a roadmap before, but now it's a blueprint. And listen, there are other interests now. In the New York Times today, there was an interesting article by Ethan Bronner talking about how Netanyahu has another motivation this time, and he has to appease the United States' wish for them to have concessions so that he will get United States cooperation in making sure that Iran is kept in check as far as their position on Israel. So the climate may be more right than ever now, or more right than in recent times.
Right. And just two quick notes on this. I don't want people to get me wrong. I'm actually a little hopeful. I know. It feels like really, but I am. And it's not just because hope springs eternal, for a couple of specific reasons. And the most prominent one being Ehud Barak, the defense minister of Israel, saying that Arabs should get East Jerusalem. And if he's kind of putting that out there as a smoke signal of, hey, look, this is the direction we're heading, that's the best news you could possibly hope for. Because then you could have a real deal on Jerusalem,
yeah,
which Netanyahu seemed to be unmovable on. On the other hand, Barak could be off the reservation, and he's just saying what he wishes happens. But we'll know, based on this one thing, mostly. If Netanyahu continues the settlement building, that means he doesn't really want peace, and this is all a lot of show and it's games, because Mahmoud Abbas said he's going to walk away from these negotiations if they continue the settlements. And he has to, because of the pressure he's got, within the Palestinian community and from Hamas, et cetera, et cetera. He'll lose all credibility if he doesn't walk away in that scenario. So we'll know if Netanyahu is serious about peace if he stops or continues the settlement expansion.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you're probably right. I think that they all have factions that are pulling for and against them within their own constituencies, too. I mean, Ehud Barak also, who is the defense minister, said that if Netanyahu leads a process, a significant number of rightist ministers will stand with him, which is encouraging, too. It's also putting pressure on those people who may not have said that, but Barak is boxing them into such a statement. So a lot of people are going to have to swallow a lot of pride and a lot of philosophy in order to have this thing work, and it's not going to go perfectly. I mean, there may be a case where a settlement continues to be built and Abbas stays, or vice versa. And so that they stop the settlements and Abbas walks away for a while. But these things all happen because there's so many people pulling at these people. But I just sort of feel like there seems to be an organized and I guess well thought out process that they're going to try and follow, and that's the most encouraging thing we've heard. And they were all standing there in the White House yesterday, and that hasn't happened either. So,
right, and I'm telling you, don't underestimate that. Ehud Barak's statement is really encouraging, because that was a huge issue to break through on. Now, having said that, Michael, real quick, I want to get to the point you want to make too. I think about President Obama. I mean, if he accomplishes this, no matter what else he does, is his presidency a success?
Let's ask that of Jimmy Carter. I mean, Jimmy Carter helped forge the greatest peace in that region. It's an enduring and lasting peace as long as Hosni Mubarak is still the president of Egypt. And his presidency was deemed a failure. I just feel like the enemies, and I was talking about this with somebody earlier today, a friend earlier today, I think the enemies of this president are such that even if he's able to pass health care, even if he's able to right the economy, and even if he's able to create peace in the Middle East, there are always going to be people that call his presidency a failed presidency. I think to have this endure, I mean, you can close your eyes whether he's a one-term or a two-term president, and there's going to be a Barack Obama presidential library. There's going to be a significant room devoted to what happens here in this peace process. So if he's able to bring any kind of peace to that region, it's going to be a feather in his cap, forgetting the legacy and whether people vote him in or out. So, and that's really what it all boils down to. Yeah, and I think that he would be happy with that legacy, but I'm afraid it's not going to please everyone.
Right. My final thought on it is, look, the right-wingers try to take credit away from Carter in so many different ways, and it was a tremendous accomplishment on his part. And by the way, they all did it based on, the idea of peace and trading land for peace, which totally worked in that case.
Correct.
Now, having said that, resolving the core Palestinian-Israeli issue is still significantly larger than the peace deal that they got with Egypt. And if Obama does that, for my part, I will always start conversations with, no matter what else he does. But you have to keep in mind, he brought peace to the Middle East, and that's a hell of a thing, right?
Unquestionably, and we might be getting a bit ahead of ourselves, but it's good hypothesis. But I agree with you. I mean, if the president or the person who is responsible for doing that, it's going to be something that they can wear with pride for a long time. And I suspect it will help Hillary Clinton, and I suspect it will help Democrats as well, because you're going to be appeasing. In one sense, it's great for the Democrats in the United States and the president of the United States to be working with, the face of right-wing Israel. And if they get something done, it shows that they worked with right-wing Israel. So at least the foreign conservative leaders will make concessions, where even if the domestic conservatives will still be the party of no, at least he can get some traction out of the others. So that there's a lesson to be learned there too.
Yep.
All right. Well, when we come back, we're going to take a break now. We're going to come back, talk a little bit about a little more about electoral politics. David Vitter in Louisiana. And a couple of other, John Bolton wants to run for president, things like that. I'm Michael Schur with Cenk Uygur's in New York. These are the Young Turks. Welcome back to the Young Turks. Michael Schur and Cenk Uygur. We've covered a little bit of Arizona, a little bit of Israel, and now we are headed back to these United States. Your old friend Alan Simpson, Cenk, the former senator for Wyoming and an Obama quote-unquote appointee, has got you again today. Tell me what's up.
Yeah, so this time he goes after veterans' disability payments, and he says that the veterans are, quote, not helping by taking those disability benefits. And he says it's ironic that these guys who helped the country by fighting for the country now are not helping the country by taking their disability payments. I can't begin to tell you how outrageous a statement that is. So we shouldn't raise taxes on the richest 1% of the country at all. We shouldn't fight those senseless wars, or we shouldn't end those to save money. We shouldn't do any of that. But veterans who fought in those wars and got hurt should voluntarily give up their disability benefits. I mean, that's the most mental thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's shocking, especially when you're talking about somebody who as a senator from Wyoming, always protected the rich and their taxation, and tried to limit their taxation. If you're asking anybody to make a sacrifice in the name of the country, it's the people that have the money and can do it. And even if you're uncomfortable doing that and you are against taxation, you should not then go to the benefits of the veterans, the people who have fought the country, the people who your party is by and large sent over there in the first place, and tell them, well, when they come back, they can't have those benefits. Simpson is not an elected official anymore. He's actually, working in a nonprofit, in a pro bono way, from what I know. But every time he says something now, it's disastrous, and it's so wrong-headed. I can't believe he's still part of the White House Commission.
Well, and of course, that's the relevant part of this. He is the co-chair of President Obama's Deficit Commission.
Yeah. So,
the question that arises is there anything Alan Simpson could say to get him fired? He's now said that there's 310 million tits sucking on Social Security, as if, we're asking for something extraordinary. No, we put money into Social Security, we're taking it out. We're not leeching off of it. It's our money. Like, Alan Simpson and his Republican friends feel like they're entitled to our money and they're entitled to spend it any way they like. And then if we want it back, they're like, oh, look at you leeches. And the veterans, they didn't sacrifice enough for this country. So that's my question to you, Michael. I mean, is there anything Alan Simpson could say that would get him fired? Or does President Obama just love Republicans so much that he wouldn't ever dare touch a hair on any of their bodies as he throws one progressive after another under the bus?
Well, I don't know if there's anything to get him fired. I don't know how these things are structured. It's a lot of saying and not a tremendous amount of doing thus far. What would be nice would be to see, I think it's Erskine Bowles as his co-chair. Is that right? Is it Erskine Bowles that's the co-chair of that commission?
That's right. Former chief of staff for President Clinton. That's right.
And it would be nice to see Bowles say something that would, upbraid Simpson in some way. for saying these things, to say that, listen, our commission, whatever Senator Simpson is saying here, our commission is not doing those things right now because we're concentrating on saving Social Security. We want to fix the deficit, but we don't want to do it with these extreme and ludicrous devices that Simpson keeps talking about. So it would be nice to see something like that from Bowles. We haven't seen that. I don't know that the president, presidents with these commissions usually keep an arm's distance until they get the results of the work of the commission.
I don't want people to mistake what I'm saying. Like, I get the political reality of it, right? So the problem is you appoint this commission and you say, all right, go do your work and you're going to be independent and I'm not going to touch you. Now, if you got somebody on the commission who's saying these things and then you don't like what he's saying, then you fire him, then people say, oh, I guess your commission wasn't that independent.
Yeah.
So I get it, and he will take a huge political hit from Fox News if he fires Alan Simpson, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, first of all, why did you appoint 14 out of 18 commission members who are fiscal conservatives? Even a majority of the Democrats that are on there are fiscal conservatives. Now, fiscal conservative doesn't mean what it used to mean. It used to mean that you just wanted to balance the budget. Now it means, no, you don't want to raise taxes. No, you don't want to cut defense spending. All you want to do is take it from the middle class. So if you're a progressive president, what the hell did you do that for? And if I was the president, would I give a damn what Fox News said? Hell no.
Yeah.
I would fire Alan Simpson, and I'd say, I'm not going to let him go after our veterans, and I'm not going to let him go after our Social Security. I will put another strong Republican in that position because that you want a Republican and a Democrat as co-chair. But I'm not going to tolerate that kind of nonsense. And I want this commission to concentrate on how to actually balance the budget and not go after our veterans or our elderly.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jen. But short of that, what would be nice to see the president do, or even a spokesperson for the president, is to issue some sort of a gag order to say that, I appointed this commission. These people are not supposed to go on TV talk and state their opinions. They're working to try and fix the deficit, and whatever result they have. Just tell Alan Simpson just to shut up. If you're not going to.
I know, Michael. I'm surprised. They probably have, but Alan Simpson, because you've been covering politics for a long time. He's a little uncontrollable.
No,
right?
You cannot shut Alan Simpson up. Yeah.
Right, and I'm sure he's off the reservation. But I actually love that he said it.
No,
because
because
if he hadn't said it, that's what they'd be doing behind closed doors, and we'd have never found out. Now we know this is what the commission is going to try to do. So at least a large faction in the commission is going to try to do that. And you get a sense before you were like, hey, you know what? I don't know. Maybe they'll cut defense significantly. Maybe they'll raise taxes significantly.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll be balanced, right? I'm not saying just do that. I'm saying maybe it'll be balanced. But now you look at it, and I have no faith at all that it's going to be balanced at all. I think it's just this is a conservative act.
Well, he is one person on this commission. Yeah, he's the co-chair of the commission, but he's got another co-chair, and there are, a ton of Democrats. And this, no matter whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, this seems just a really far off the reservation kind of promotion, idea to promote. Looking now at the politics of it, I agree with you. It's great. I mean, it's great for Democrats to be able to go out, even with whispers of the fact that the Republicans are going to try and change your Social Security benefits, or the Republicans are going to try and monkey with your veterans benefits. Listen, I mean, the Democrats need everything they have in the next 60 days to try and right the ship in some way. So this stuff is a gift if the Democrats know what to do with it, though. That's different.
All right, last thing on it for me is, look, this is the main problem with Obama. And honestly, the politics of it, that's good. You're right about that. But I'm not even referring to the politics. I'm referring to the substance of the commission, right? Now, but when you look at Obama, politically speaking, to go partly towards your point, Michael, this is part and parcel, man, of what he does. Is Obama 101. Paint yourself into a corner. Because now he's screwed. One, he can't fire Simpson in Washington conventional wisdom. Of course, I think he can. But Washington will be, outraged if he does, right? And say his commission is not independent. But now we know what the commission is up to, because it's not like other people are objecting. I mean, Alan Simpson doesn't come and tell this on the press if he hasn't already run it by people and have them go, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's cut veterans benefits, And so if they said to him, hey, Alan, in private, because they've been doing this for a long time, they're having these meetings. If in private, the commission, the other 17 guys were like, hey, Alan, are you freaking mental? We're not going to do that. He probably wouldn't have blabbered to the press about it.
Yeah.
So So my point is, when the commission results come out, and if they come out this way, then Obama, if he says, oh, no, I'm not going to do that, then they're going to say, oh, look at that. He pretended it was an independent commission, and now that they want to slash Social Security and balance the budget off the back of the middle class, of course, they're not going to frame it that way, but that's going to be the reality. Oh, but now Obama wants to back out. You see that? He's a partisan hack. God, he sucks at politics. I'm amazed by how much Obama just, now he sucks so bad at politics as president. I'm beginning to wonder how the hell he won the presidency. I'm wondering if he got lucky. He just found one word, change, and he just said it a million times until we were suckers and we fell for it.
Right. It's like I'm sure that monologue was given, privately in her closet by Hillary Clinton one day. To what is going on? How am I losing to this guy? But I agree with a lot of what you're saying. And yeah, here there are a couple of factors that come into play here with this. It's not like a lot of Americans are walking around, and I think the White House knows this, saying, oh, what's going on with that deficit commission? This is not where they're going to win or lose. But what is great about it are the things that people do worry about, and that is, veterans worry about benefits and the elderly worry about Social Security. And the other sort of minor thing that I disagree with you on is the idea that Alan Simpson would run something by someone before talking about it. I think he's made a career of just talking about things without running them by people.
I'm sorry, one last thought on that, Michael, just to offer what you said. Look, you're right that nobody's talking about the deficit commission in the country, right?
Yeah.
Outside of politicians.
Right.
But then that leads to my second point, which is, why did you appoint this in the first place? In fact, that was my first point. That why did you paint yourself in a corner like this when this is a fake issue? I mean, deficit's a real issue, but the idea that we need a deficit commission that's going to tell us to cut Social Security or to cut spending in the middle of a gigantic recession, well, that was an issue you did not have to bring up at all. But he chose to do it, and he chose to stack it with conservatives, which was, I don't want to use the R word here because Sarah Palin will cause me trouble, but it was really, really dumb.
Yeah, it may have been dumb, or it may have been really, really smart, and I'll tell you why. He may, the people that were talking about the deficit were the Republicans, and they were going to try and turn that into an issue, and now the president and the White House can turn around and they say, well, we have this committee appointed, and we have a lot of Republicans on the committee. So if you want to say, what are you doing about the deficit? Well, I've put a lot of Republicans in place to help me fix the deficit.
Yeah, but when you ignore their, either that means you're going to then adopt Republican proposals that they come up with, or if you ignore them, then they're going to say, oh, you see that socialist mouse.
Yeah, you're right. But even if it's prophylactic going into an unpopular, election season, it may politically be worth doing. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. That it seems like a lot of show, but a lot of it has to end up being show in order to try and win elections. All I can say is looking at the glass half full part of it. We're getting some gifts from Alan Simpson here. We're getting scare tactics. We're actually getting scared about what they're going to do as far as veterans benefits and Social Security. And for Democrats, that is something they need to be able to talk about on the campaign trail. So I think that it's doing some favors, even in an unwitting way.
All right, now, it's not just Alan Simpson that's talking about Social Security. We've also got Joe Miller. He's a Tea Party candidate in Alaska that just beat Lisa Murkowski for the Republican primary. It's backed by Sarah Palin. And he's even more blunt about Social Security. He says, quote, longer term, there's got to be a move outside of that system. Now, that's talking about revamping the entire Social Security system. He says, quote, ultimately, we want to transfer the power back to the states so that states can take up the mantle of those programs if they so desire. What?
Yeah.
The states are going to do Social Security if they so desire? Here it is, a Republican candidate for Senate in Alaska saying, let's do away with Social Security. He was on CNN. John King asked him a follow-up. And he said, look, if you're elected senator and you get your way, would someone who was born the day that Miller was sworn in perhaps grow up in America where this is John King's question, where there is not a federal Social Security program if you got your way? And Miller said, absolutely. Okay? So these guys, they're not playing. They want to get rid of Social Security.
Yeah, they want to get rid of it. And people like Miller are even talking about it being unconstitutional. although it has stood the test of a constitutional challenge 60 or 70 years ago. They want to fight this tooth and nail. They want to fight any kind of entitlement. And I think, especially an Alaskan going into something like this, where they have very different benefits in their states for Native Alaskans. It's wrongheaded, and he will be a junior senator from Alaska were he to be elected, and I'm guessing that he will be elected. And I think that his effect on that argument will be null. But you have to take that into account, because you don't want to test that. You don't want to prove me right. I think that it's really scary when you have this kind of dialogue out there. He's not going to have a lot of people to talk about it with once he gets to Washington, though.
Look, the Social Security Act was passed in 1935. The Supreme Court actually did rule on it in 1937 and said it was constitutional. But now you're right, Joe Miller wants to go back and relitigate that. By the way, at that time, you know what they used to do with the poor if they didn't have any money and they were older? Well, if they couldn't afford to take care of themselves, they would be asked to spend their final days as, quote, inmates at poorhouses.
At the poorhouse. That's what the poorhouse was. That's how we know you're in the poorhouse. That's what it was. That's great, Joe Miller.
And by the way, those issues are not long gone. If we didn't have Social Security, the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities estimated that 20 million people in this country, elderly people, would go into poverty. And they wouldn't have anything. There's no recourse. There's nothing left. You don't have Social Security. You're in poverty. You're older. What are you going to do? And I guess the Republicans love that world. Yeah. And they want to go back to the poorhouses. If you're in Alaska and you vote for Joe Miller, that's it. You're not in favor of Social Security. He couldn't be any clearer. If you like that, I guess you vote for him. But I think if you like Social Security and you paid into it all these years and you like your money back when you retire, you'd be nuts to vote for Miller.
And first of all, you're right. You'd be nuts to vote for Miller. This program, Social Security, no matter what anybody tells you, every single actuary who looks at it is saying that it is a solvent program through at least 2037. Some of them say even later. And so the fact that they're saying, well, we're going to run out of money, we're going to be that is incorrect. And the percentages that the benefits would drop after that year, I think it's 2037, are insignificant numbers now. It's not like it would just all of a sudden become insolvent and Social Security would go away. No, there'd be enough to pay 70 or 80% of your Social Security benefits, and that can be corrected as it goes along. So anyone who's saying that, well, we're just in order to keep this thing afloat, we're going to have to really tax you pretty hard, and that's not true. It simply isn't true. This is a solvent government program. It is one that works, and it's one that we all rely on and have paid into. And we don't want poorhouses again, and that's what would happen.
All right. Now, if you thought Joe Miller was a crazy candidate that the Tea Party guys came up with in Alaska, wait till you get a load of Christine O'Donnell. She's the Tea Party candidate in Delaware, right? Now, they found some old comments of her from the 1990s. And before I read you this, I want you to understand the context. The Republican Party thinks she's awful, okay? That's how extreme she is. Here's the state party chairman, Tom Ross. He says, quote, she's not a viable candidate for any office in the state of Delaware. Quote, she could not be elected dog catcher, right? So she's way too far to the right for the Republican Party in Delaware. Now, look, a lot of Tea Party people would say, hey, well, that's who we want to overthrow, the Republican Party establishment. Okay. Now, let's see if the state of Delaware will elect this woman. Here's some of her comments. First, she was on an MTV series called Sex in the 90s, where she was in favor of course, abstinence. That's normal. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's normal, right? But she went on to be against masturbation. Interesting. So here's what she said. Quote, the Bible says that lust in your heart is committing adultery. And so you can't masturbate without lust. You got to give her credit on the second part, Michael. That one's kind of true.
Right. Yeah.
That'd be hard to pull off. So she's against masturbation. She continues. The reason that you don't tell people that masturbation is the answer to AIDS and all these other problems that come with sex outside of marriage is because, again, it is not addressing the issue. You're just going to create somebody who is, I was going to say, toying with his sexuality. Pardon the pun. Okay. Now, look. The anti-masturbation platform in Delaware, I don't think is going to go very far. But I thought that last comment was the most interesting. So anybody who's ever masturbated is, quote, toying with their sexuality. What does that even mean? Is she saying that they turn gay or something? What planet is she on?
You know, I don't know, and you know, you read. It's sort of like there's nothing more we can say after what she has said. And the fact that the Republicans have distanced themselves in Delaware from her is all we have to know. But I mean, this is. You want this? These are the people the Tea Party are putting out there. These are the crazy wackos that are showing up to Tea Party events and then running for office. And she's a serious candidate. I mean, she's taking herself seriously. They have their primaries on September 14th there, and you know, these kind of comments I mean, it just goes to the root of how crazy these people are.
All right. By the way, one last thing. She said if you do age-appropriate sex education, that could convince children that strangers with candy were, quote, not so creepy.
Yeah. All right. Well, folks, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I'm Michael Short-Jenk-Uger. These are the Young Turks.